Driving drunk or on drugs is dangerous, sometimes even deadly. But should it be a crime the first time you get caught? Fox 6 investigator Brian Paulson joins us now to show why every state in America says yes, except for one.
That's right, Stephanie. For the fifth time since 2009, Wisconsin lawmakers are considering a bill that would criminalize drunk driving on the first offense. And for the fifth time in a row, key legislative leaders oppose it. They want to focus on repeat offenders instead. But our investigation has uncovered new data that shows why that approach could be fatally flawed. In a state whose very identity is steeped in alcohol,
Have you had anything to drink at all tonight? Doesn't matter.
trying to cut down on drunk driving
1, 2, 3.
is an exercise in small, wobbly steps.
You can't hold on to me, though.
Yes, I can.
For years, state lawmakers have tried to chip away at the problem.
Because we have the most lax drunk driving laws in the country.
And the bills they have passed are having an impact. Since 2003, impaired driving deaths in Wisconsin have been cut in half.
Do you know how many people drive over the legal limit?
Probably a lot.
But new data obtained by the Fox 6 investigators shows why some of the most dangerous intoxicated drivers
It's awful. It's horrible. I don't wish it upon anybody.
are never discovered until it's too late.
I remember leaving the haunted house.
Sam Lannon has no memory of the horrendous crash that nearly killed her.
He just hands me this note that basically says, your daughter's been in a car accident.
Or the days she spent unconscious on a ventilator.
And I don't remember any of that.
We literally just sat there and cried and held her hand.
Her mother is filled with both grief and guilt.
Good morning.
Because her daughter survived.
She was my best friend.
16-year-old Hannah Church did not.
Hannah's dad actually called and said, how's Sam? That's the first thing he said to me. Can you believe that? His daughter died in a car accident, and the first thing he says to me is, how's Sam?
In the fall of 2016, Sam and Hannah were struck head-on by 28-year-old Robert Frank, who was driving the wrong way on a divided highway near Milton. His blood alcohol concentration was 0.13.
Sorry. It's like really upsetting.
Had Frank survived the crash, he would likely have been charged with homicide for killing Hannah. But had police stopped him before the crash, he would not have been charged with a crime at all.
It shouldn't matter whether it's the first time or the sixth time.
In Wisconsin, and only Wisconsin, driving drunk is a civil violation, a traffic ticket, until you've been caught twice.
I think that many people view a first offense as just a mistake that can happen to anyone.
State Representative Jim Ott, a Republican, wants to change that.
Lives get shattered.
So does Senator Chris Larson, a Democrat.
Drinking is okay. Drinking and driving is not okay.
They are among a bipartisan slate of lawmakers who want to make drunk driving a misdemeanor on the first offense. It's the fifth time this has come up in the last 6 legislative sessions, but it's never come up for a vote. This time, they're offering offenders a way out, an opportunity to have the crime expunged after 5 years. But even that proposal faces long odds at the Capitol.
Why is it so hard to deal with the first offense?
Because that's what would actually make the difference. It would actually change the culture.
Like you've never driven after you've had a drink or two?
The Badger State's notorious reputation for excessive drinking
Who doesn't? Come on.
has made criminalizing the first offense highly controversial.
I now have a crime on my record, and there's nothing I can do to solve it.
When lawmakers proposed a dozen drunk driving bills earlier this year, Senator Van Wanggaard expressed opposition to just one, the bill that would make criminals out of first-time offenders.
What we have is working at this point for those first offenders.
Wanggaard says he wants to focus on repeat offenders instead, but data from the Wisconsin Department of Transportation shows by then it's often too late. Over the past 3 decades, 77% of drivers involved in an alcohol-related fatal crash had no prior offenses. That's roughly 3 out of every 4.
If you deal with the repeat offenders, maybe you're getting rid of 25% of the people who are killing people. I mean, that's ridiculous. How does that make sense?
And I know we're not going to eliminate drunk driving.
Before Jim Ott was a state lawmaker, he was a TV meteorologist. And long before that, his life was touched by drunk driving, a story he's hesitant to share.
Because sometimes people will say, well, then that's why you got this vendetta against drunk drivers.
Ott is now 72, but when he was a freshman in high school in 1961, he watched as a drunk driver ran over his friend just a few feet away.
What I observed that afternoon in September of 1961 has happened over and over and over again.
58 years later,
Turn around. No. Under arrest, turn around.
he's doing all he can to stop it from happening to others. Just last week, a 5-member Senate committee voted to send 4 drunk driving bills to the full Senate, including bills that would create a mandatory minimum sentence of 5 years in prison for a drunk driving homicide and 18 months in prison for a 5th or 6th drunk driving offense. But the bill to criminalize the first offense was not among them.
So, Brian, you say there is bipartisan support for criminalizing the first offense, but yet it still stands little chance of passing. Why is that?
Well, some people will tell you it's the Tavern League of Wisconsin. They've been around a long time, have a lot of influence. But interestingly enough, the Tavern League has not taken an official position on that bill. Wednesday night, we're going to show you how they wield their influence in other ways. Plus, a relatively new group that's fighting to keep drunk driving from becoming a crime and why that surprised one of the bill's sponsors. Safe to say there's bipartisan opposition as well.
If you don't think we have a problem, you're fooling yourself. We just got to decide how we're going to attack it and how serious we want to get.
And there's been a lot of effort to tackle it. It's just the question is, how far do you go?
Ryan, great work as always. Well, still to come.